In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the brand new iMacs and iPad Pros that were announced by Apple in the 2021 spring loaded event so that you can decide, is it worth considering an upgrade? If it's your first time here, my name is Pete. This is Studio Live today, where my goal is to help you create, record, and release your best music. If that sounds like your kind of bag, consider subscribing. Now, the format of today's show, we're going to be going through some general updates on what's new, but focusing in on the iMac and the iPad. We're then going to go through the iMac, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the iPad, good, bad, and ugly, my conclusion and advice right now, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A for the folks if you're here live on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. So I hope you're doing well. I'm here at Apple Park. My buddy Tim Cook is somewhere behind there, and he is looking pretty buff. If you saw the announcement, I'm calling him Buff Cook. That's my new name for him. So what have we got here? What are these updates? And if you have missed all of the news of the last few days, what have you missed out on? Well, we've got ourselves some brand new iMacs, and they look like this. They are colorful, they are thin, they're running the M1 chip. That's kind of the highlight package, and we'll be going through all the details of those in just a moment. We got ourselves a brand new iPad Pro supercharged by the Apple M1 chip. So Apple have gone all in. They've grabbed their entire stack and pushed it all in and said, we're all in on the M1, because they've got it in their new iMac. They've got it in the iPad Pro as well. So that is what we'll be talking about in this one. The main things here are that we've got obviously the new processors. We've got a heap more RAM in the iPad Pro. Back over on the iMac, we've got some changes to some ports and some configuration. We're going to go through all of that and let you know what's actually worth it. And if you are already using a Mac to create music or to edit video or to do your creative side, is a new iMac something you should be considering? And the same with your iPad. If you're using an iPad right now, or you're using an iPad Pro like myself, I've got the 2020 model or the 2018 model, what's the difference and why should you consider upgrading? That's what we're going to be talking about. So let's start, shall we, with the iMac. So we're going to do, as I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's start with the positive, shall we? Let's start with what's good about these suckers. And to do that, we're going to jump here into the specs. So there are the, you can go here to apple.com and you can check out the pricing and the tech specs. We're going to check out everything that we need to know here. The first thing I'll say about the good is, as you can see on the side there, a headphone jack. Yes, a 2021 Apple product that contains a headphone jack. I'm already sold. Take my money now, Apple. And headphone jack for the win. You can actually plug it. Who thought that we'd be at the point where a headphone jack would be a selling point? But let's take a look at a glance at what we've got here. So we've got a 24-inch 4.5K display. Now, if you know the older iMacs, the smaller version was a 21.5-inch, so you're getting a little bit more screen real estate there. And 4.5K screen because, you know what, Apple have got to give you that extra half a K. Yeah, so it's a decent resolution screen size you've got there. You've got the 8-core Apple M1 chip. You've got up to 16 gigabytes of unified memory, up to 2 terabyte storage. You've got the keyboard with the Touch ID, which is pretty darn cool. I talked about that in my last video. And you've got a 1080p webcam. Finally, Apple have said, yes, we'll upgrade to a 1080p. Every other device that they're selling at the moment has a 720p camera. Not cool. So what is the price? Well, it's going to set you back $12.99 for the entry level, which I wouldn't recommend, which we're going to talk about why in a minute, or $14.99 or $16.99 for the next up level model. And it comes in blue, green, pink, and silver. Or if you go with the higher end, you can add in yellow, which looks like this. You can add in orange, which looks like this, or purple, which looks like this. Am I the only one that thinks that these colors are going to date pretty darn quickly? Or are these new pastels just going to be it forever? I don't know. So there you go. You've got the chip. You've got the Apple M1 chip. You've got the one with the 7-core GPU. So this one here in the lower end model is what's in the lower end MacBook Air. And this one here is what's in the higher end MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro and the Mac Mini with the 8-core GPU and CPU. The storage there, as you can see, 256 or 512, configurable up to 1 or 2 terabytes. Your memory's all on a system on a chip, so everything's just integrated. There's your display, there's your camera. The rest of it just goes into a lot of the nuts and bolts and the details of the new iMac. But let's go back up. We'll put it on there. Let's put it on the, what color should we look while we do that? What would I buy if I actually bought one right now? It'd have to go red, wouldn't I? Because red goes faster, although they're calling it pink there. Pink front and a red back. We'll pop that there anyway so you can take a quick look at that. What do I like about this? So, as I mentioned, I would definitely go the higher end model because you're going to get the 4 ports. Where's our specs that show this? It's further down, isn't it? There we go. So the connections that we have here. So we've got Thunderbolt 3 up on here. We've got 4 of those. There's a better one that actually shows the two side by side. Scrolling. See, it's not in a logical format here on the Apple website, so I'm trying to find the spot where it tells you. Trust me on this one. One of them has only 2 ports. The other one has 4 ports. I'll stop jumping around there. So you can get up to 4. There you go. 2 Thunderbolt USB 4 ports on all of them. And then you do have an additional 2 USB 3 ports. There you go. So you've got the Gigabit Ethernet, and then you've got the 2 USB 3 ports on the new one. There it is. That's what I wanted to show. So the lower end model just has the 2 ports there. The higher end model has this. Now you might be thinking, there's no USB-A. There's nowhere to plug in my regular audio interface or my regular stuff, and that's true. So you will need some sort of adapter. Going from A to C is super simple. So if you've got something like a Focusrite Scarlett or a Steinberg interface and you want to plug in, you can go directly from A into USB-C or USB 3, completely backwards compatible. So you don't need to have a whole bunch of dongles. If you're thinking you're going to live in Dongle Town, it's not going to be quite so bad. So I would definitely go with the higher end model. It's only $200 more, and I know, when we're saying it's only $1,500, you're going to say, Pete, that's still a big chunk of change. But it will give you those additional ports there. So that is definitely one of the good things. The 4.5K screen is definitely good. I'm trying to find the native resolution. I did have it there a moment ago. But it's got a very big resolution. Obviously, being a 4K screen, you're going to have a very nice... There it is. Here's the screen. Size and weight. Where do we have it? No, it's not there. But the 4.5K screen is very nice. And being a 24-inch, I use 24-inch monitors here. That's a good thing. Yeah? Totally. What else have we got here? The M1 chip. Now, I'm running the Mac Mini M1, and this has got the exact same guts. So if you went up to the top here, we'll just go to the home. If you went up to the top here and you go to Mac, you'll see here that we've got the MacBook Air, the Mac 24-inch, and the Mac Mini. So if you go into here and have a look at the Mac Mini, which looks like so old news now, doesn't it? It's running exactly the same guts there. So Apple M1 chip. The difference is from $699. So the iMac, all the additional features on the iMac take it from $699 at that entry level all the way up to $1499. And the reason I'm comparing that is that we've actually got those additional ports here on the Mac Mini. So it is a bit of a trade-off. You are paying an additional amount if you want to get the fancy screen and the fancy colors. So do keep that in mind, that the exact same guts as you're seeing, not in that $1299 one. Remember, that's the MacBook Air. That's the 7-core GPU version. But the $1499 one, that is the one that is going to, that's going to have the same guts as that. So you are paying twice as much, almost, well, more than twice as much, just for having that screen and some of the other things you get, like the Magic Keyboard and the Magic Mouse, which I actually really dig. I actually really like the Magic Keyboard that comes with this, because if we go back to the iMac and we come on down, yes, Apple, I've never seen a Mac like this before. Very, very thin, very, very good. Take me to your keyboard. There's the display. Take me to your keyboard, Mac. I'm in the promotional version one, so it's going to take me a while to get down there. No. There it is. Like we said, so what I like about this is the Touch ID on the keyboard. That's only a small thing, yeah, but it's something pretty cool. So, and I'm not a big fan of the Magic Mouse. I find them really clunky. Magic Trackpad, they're all very overpriced. But again, for the $14.99, you get this incorporated. So that's kind of worth it. You get the 24-inch screen built in. You get yourself the keyboard with the Touch ID. That's going to make it easy if you're using it. If you're coming into your studio and you just hold your finger on there, it logs you straight in. You're back to creating. Anything that can stop you from anything that can not stop you from creating is a good thing. The other thing is just, yeah, we talked about the M1 and the fact that the Mac Mini is a beast. So in terms of processing power, if you're running GarageBand, if you're running Logic, Final Cut Pro, any of your pro-level apps, especially if you go the 16GB model in the RAM, you're going to have no problems at all. It's going to absolutely crush. So, yeah, there's no problems in terms of performance. We'll go to the Loom. Oh, we've gone to the wrong thing. We keep going to the wrong thing. We'll want to go back to the tech specs. I've lost it. That's fine. We'll just take a look at those ones there while we have a chat. How thin it is, I mean, yeah, you can say that that's a good thing, and you can see exactly how thin or thick it is. But yeah, if you like thinness, that's fine. I personally don't care. Every time they make something thinner and take something away, I'm a bit unhappy. And you know what? If they made this so thin that they couldn't fit a headphone jack in there, I would have been pretty unhappy. But the headphone jack remains because they've put it in sideways. And the reason this can be so thin, and it used to do the big bulging out thing, is basically the difference between the system on a chip and the old Intel system, because the Intel chips had to have separate memory, separate cooling, separate GPU for your graphics. So now that everything's on the one chip, it all sits down in the little chin section down here, and it stays out of your way. You don't have to worry about that. So, the bad. What don't I like about this? Well, I don't like that it's a single screen. So I'm a dual screen user. The very fact that I've got that screen over there for you right now, and I'm looking at my screen here with all my notes and with my StreamYard so that I can stream this video, I couldn't really do that with an iMac. Now I could, but here's the thing. As you would have seen, when we took a look, we've got to try and find the tech specs again. Here we go. When we took a look here, the back of these things, there are literally only those 4 ports. What's missing there? HDMI. Ethernet. Ethernet's on the power pack. It's a weird setup, but it's there anyway. But all we have, we want that clean look. We've only got those 4 ports, excuse me. I'm getting all choked up about the lack of ports. So we do have the 4 ports there, but you don't have the ability to plug in HDMI. So if I wanted to put an HDMI monitor here, yeah, no problem. I can use a USB-C to HDMI adapter or a Thunderbolt adapter because we've got the cables there, but it's getting clunky. Plus, I'm not going to have the symmetry of having 2 monitors look the same unless I'm plugging into another iMac, which I ain't doing because you can't do it anyway. So people like me that are doing streaming, if you're using 2 monitors for your recording or your video editing or your setup, that's something to consider. Maybe a Mac Mini where you could easily plug in 2 monitors, one HDMI and one via a Thunderbolt jack. That's going to be a lot easier for you and a lot cheaper. You'll probably get yourself a Mac Mini and 2 decent LCD or LED monitors for the same price as the iMac. So do keep that in mind if you're a 2-screen kind of person like me. Obviously not upgradable. So for those that have come from the world where you can upgrade either your Mac or especially your PC world, it's not upgradable. So you can't actually upgrade this once you make your decision. If you decide to go the entry level here and you decide that you want to spend $14.99 and just get the 256 gig SSD with the 8 gigabytes of RAM, then yeah, you're kind of stuck there. And if you want to upgrade, you got to trade it in and you got to do the thing there. So I don't think that's a thing. What else have we got there? In the low-end model only has the 2 ports. So I've already talked about that. I wouldn't go the low-end model. There it is, 4480 by 2520. I knew the display resolution was somewhere. So you've only got those 2 different jacks. So again, down here, the 2 Thunderbolt USB 4. On the up version, you've got the 4 ports. So having those 2 ports, I think you'd very quickly take a trip to Dongletown. As soon as you plug in an audio interface and a webcam, you're done. Like, that's it. And I know, yeah, you don't have to plug in a webcam. It's all integrated. But yeah, USB, MIDI keyboard and a USB audio interface, and you're done. So yeah, you'll probably be using a hub or a dock or something, which you can do because they're Thunderbolt ports. So that's a good thing. This is a bit weird, but I really want that Magic Keyboard, but it's not sold separately yet. So we don't have a sold separately for the Magic Keyboard with the Touch ID, which I think is very sad because I would buy one. I'll take my money, Apple. I will give you all the money for the Magic Keyboard for my Mac Mini because I haven't found a good keyboard that works well with the Mac Mini. And that Magic Keyboard with the Touch ID, I mean, it would only be a few seconds, but every time I type in my password, I feel so outdated. I feel like I'm in the past again. So that is the iMac. There's a lot good about it, but again, when you break it down and you look at what the guts are, the guts in there are basically exactly the same as the Mac Mini. And you can spec out a Mac Mini for around about 60 to 70% of the cost. Now, you really just have to weigh that up and go, do I want the convenience of the all-in-one design with the keyboard and with the mouse and with everything there and not have to worry about plugging anything else in? Or do I want the flexibility of having the Mac Mini, meaning I can plug it into any display that I want. I can plug into a 50-inch monitor if I wanted to, or I can plug into 24-inch monitors, which is what I do with my Mac Mini. So that's kind of the considerations. From an audio point of view and a video point of view, the screen's obviously very nice resolution on that screen, and the ability to do all of your GarageBand, your Logic, your editing of videos, anything you want to do, it is going to crush it. And I can speak from experience with the M1 that it does a very, very good job. So that is the iMac. What do you think? Are you considering this? Do you want to go with it? And if you do, the most important thing is what color? Yeah, exactly. You don't want to play. You don't want to play Dongle Kong, as Gary Hubs is saying here. And Joey, I'm with you, my friend. I want to buy that keyboard. I think they will release it. They want to get your money any way they can. So with the new Apple TV, they're selling the new Siri remote separately. I think they're just probably low on stock, and they need all the keyboards for the iMacs, and they don't want to start selling them separately and then run out. So I would imagine that maybe in the next month or two they'll sell it, because they must know that there's a bunch of us Mac Mini users that really, really want that keyboard. Absolutely. So that's your Mac. What about your iPad? So I know that many of you, and in fact, we'll jump over here, because I put a question on my channel, and in fact I'll find it. We'll just jump here. I'll find it on the community tab here, because I actually asked you if you had $1,500 to spend, because that's where I'd start this year. If you had $1,500 to spend, which is the cost of that entry level, well, what I'd consider the entry level, the one with 4 ports and the one with the 8-core GPU, what would you buy? Would you actually go down and buy an iMac? Would you buy something on the Mac M1 range? Would you buy an iPad Pro, which we'll talk about in a moment? Or would you buy yourself a PC or something else? So let's see what you had to say and what you voted on this one. So iPad Pro, Mac M1, Windows PC, or something else. What do you think? What do you think got up? Well, it's interesting. Here's the results that we have so far. From the 278 votes, iPad Pro at 37%, Mac M1 at 45%. So I don't know whether to be surprised about how many of you think the iPad Pro is what you would choose for your creating, or how many people actually would swing towards the M1. Where would I sit? That's a good question. As you know, I generally tend to sit on the fence. So I may be the wrong person to ask, because I like to be a fence sitter and sit somewhere in between. So yeah, interestingly, there at only 14% said a Windows PC. Now that's the demographic of this channel. So I know there'll be some of you saying, you're crazy. If you got $1,500, you could spec out the most high-end gaming PC. And you can. But here's the thing. The M1 has kind of done something that I didn't think it could do, and it's basically been a game changer. And I know that's said too much, and I know it's cliche, and I know I sound like an Apple fanboy. I'm not. I used a PC for 30-something years. I've only used a Mac for less than a year now, but it has been a game changer. Just not having to think about things, not having to listen to whirring fans, not having to manage memory and all that sort of thing. It has worked well. And I'm running the absolute base model, the 8 gigabytes of RAM Mac Mini M1. I almost bought it just to prove that it wasn't going to work for me and it wasn't going to do what I needed it to do. It proved me wrong. So there you go. Take that for what it is. It's one man's opinion, but it is what it is. So before we jump in to the iPad and take a look at what that's all about, today's video is actually brought to you by me. It's brought to you by the Studio Live Today merchandise. So yes, if you want to grab yourself a Studio Live Today mug, and your coffee actually tastes better. I'm drinking water today, but it does taste better. Let's just... Yeah, it definitely tastes better from the Studio Live Today mug. So if you jump over to studiolivetoday.com/merch, you got t-shirts, because I know many of you in the Northern Hemisphere, it's coming into your summer. So pick yourself up a t-shirt. They're only about $16, $17, $22 here in Australia. You get yourself a hoodie if you're in a cooler climate like I am here, or of course the mug there. And because I'm so impressed with Tim Cook, and I'm inspired, I want to get buff like Buff Cook. If you use the code BuffCook for just the next 3 days, this weekend only, you're going to save yourself 13%. Why 13? I don't know. Just seemed like a good amount. Plus I'm already selling them super cheap, so I can't really afford to give more than 13% away, or I'd be paying you to take these away. All right, so yeah, if you do want to check out the Studio Live Today merch, go over there, studiolivetoday.com/merch. Use the code BuffCook at checkout. You'll save yourself 13% off any of the gear there, and you'll be supporting the channel and keeping the lights on here at Studio Live Today. Let's talk iPads, and more particularly and specifically the iPad Pro. This is it, the iPad Pro. Now the big change here is that, of course, it has the M1 chip, so it has got the same exact guts as the iMac that we just looked at. Now that's ridiculous, yeah, because it's got the same system on a chip. This is why Apple spent so much time engineering the system on a chip and going down this platform, because it means that they can fit it in something like an iPad Pro. And they've exactly done that. There it is, the M1 chip that they're very proud of. The XDR display, they've got mini LED on the 12.9-inch model, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's 5G because whatever. Yeah, there's lots of things. That's pretty bad though, look at that. they've got a very poor white on white text experience there. That doesn't look like it's looking like it should look, right? Yeah, no, not so good. I know, got to pick on Apple when things aren't exactly right. That's the way we roll. So let's go through, and what is the good about this new iPad Pro? Well, let's jump over to the tech specs, shall we? Because we've got to look at the tech specs and see what is actually good. What is good is the 12.9-inch display. So it does have what they're calling the Liquid Retina XDR. Now, if you've been following Apple for a while, you know they had the Pro XDR display, which was the many $1,000 liquid LED display, what they call their Liquid Retina display. And they've basically replicated that in a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So that is actually super impressive to be able to have that. We'll see if we can find where it's got where does it have the information? There it is. The Liquid Retina display, a 12.9-inch diagonal mini LED backlit multi-touch display with IPS technology. Now, burying the lead there, you'll notice that the 11-inch does not have that. So the 11-inch is actually running the exact same screen as my iPad Pro 2020 here. And this is what we're going to look at. With the Mac, we didn't really focus on the difference between an old Mac and the new M1 because it's absolutely kind of game-changingly different. So if you're running an older Mac and you might be considering, do I upgrade? Well, yeah, if you go to M1, it's a whole different ballgame. This is still a whole different ballgame, but the 11-inch iPad Pro 2020 that I'm holding here has a lot of similarities. So the actual frame of it, the guts of it totally different. The screen and the frame and the format's the same, which is actually good because what I could do is I could grab an 11-inch, the one I'm seeing there, the 11-inch iPad Pro 2021. I could keep my existing Magic Keyboard. I can keep any of my cases, my accessories. It's all the same. There's a couple of differences there, including the Thunderbolt port, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it's pretty much the same. Anyway, the one thing I am impressed by, and the reason that I'll probably end up costing myself a lot more money, is that if you're going to go there, wouldn't you go with the Liquid Retina display? There's less reason for me to update if I'm going to just keep the same exact display and not have all the fanciness for things that I do, like editing in LumaFusion. And kudos to LumaFusion, by the way. They got a big sort of front center stage view. They actually talked about LumaFusion a lot, and LumaFusion were kind of an also-ran. I think they were pushing more towards Adobe and talking about, Adobe Premiere Elements and things in previous events. LumaFusion, my favorite video editing platform, got a lot of love in this one. So that screen will be amazing for that. The other thing that's going to be good, and both of them have this, where does it have it there? The Thunderbolt dock. So the USB-C, the dock used to be USB-C. There it is. It's here on the display there. It's now a Thunderbolt USB 4 dock at the bottom of your connection. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you've actually got a bit more flexibility. So if we jump over here, I just did a quick search here for Thunderbolt docks, and there's just a whole much bigger range of Thunderbolt docks that you can actually pick up here. So, from anything from $50 up to $100 or $200, you're just getting a lot, like there's the USB-C versions, but the Thunderbolt docks, you're getting a lot more bang and a lot more flexibility for things like high-speed storage and display. You're getting a better throughput with your Thunderbolt than you do with USB-C. So to me, that's a pretty big deal and something that may be a bit of a game changer and another thing that pushes me towards it. The thing that's really pushing me towards it, though, is, of course, the M1 chip. So this is strange because Apple have never really talked about RAM before. Like, never. When they're talking about their iPads and their iPhones, they don't talk about RAM for the reason that they think you shouldn't have to care, that it's a consumer device, it just works, don't worry about the RAM. The fact that they've mentioned the RAM here is quite interesting. So Apple M1 chip, and it is the upgraded chip. So again, there's the 8-core CPU, 7-core GPU chip, which is in the MacBook Air, and it's in the lower model iMac. This is actually using the 8 and 8. So it's the full 16-core neural engine, 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU versions. Now, the 8 gigabyte of RAM comes on the 128, 256, and 512 gigabyte storage model. Or if you go to 1 or 2 terabytes, you're getting 16 gigabytes of RAM, right? That's pretty nuts. So this is, I would get to the point, now I've got my Mac Mini here. My Mac Mini is running this, and it's actually got the 256, and it's got exactly this chip. So I could just buy, if I bought the 256 gigabyte iPad Pro, the guts of that, the system on a chip inside my iPad Pro would be identical to that running my Mac Mini right now, which crushes it. But the even more impressive thing is, if I upgraded to the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte storage, that's going to cost a lot. Don't get me wrong. Then I'm actually going to get 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's crazy, yeah. So 16 gigabytes in a tablet. And we'll talk at the end of the Q&A about why that's so important and what that could possibly mean for the next steps. Because yeah, that you don't need no 16 gigabytes to run iPad OS. Even LumaFusion running like multiple clips of 4K in HDR is not going to be using those 16 gigabytes of RAM. So why have they upgraded this? Well, one, because they've got the system on the chip there. They've already developed it. Why would they do a new one that's only got 6 or 12 when they've already developed the one that's got 8 or 16? And yeah, I think in WWDC, we're going to be seeing some things. We're going to be seeing some further announcements around what you're going to be able to do with your iPad Pro, because having that sort of power in there, yeah, it's time. I know we've talked about things like Final Cut Pro and Logic on an iPad Pro. I think we're going to get there. I think the ultimate convergence of Mac OS and iPad OS is happening. Which way it goes, I'm not even going to speculate. Every time I speculate, I get it wrong. But something's happening. They're not going to put this out there. Apple don't give you extra stuff. They don't give you more without a reason. It just doesn't happen. They give you the bare minimum unless they have to. So that's my take on that. What else is good about it? As I mentioned before, you've got the exact same design. So the only difference is it's slightly thicker and slightly heavier. So for your 12.9 inch, keep in mind that if you've got the Magic Keyboard for the 12.9 inch for the 2020 or the 2018, it is heavier, and there is a new Magic Keyboard model for the 12.9s. There is also the white Magic Keyboard, which don't buy. It's going to get, like the black one here has already got my fingerprints and dust and crud all over it. The white one's just going to look great for about an hour, and then it won't. So yeah, keep that in mind though, that the 12.9 is slightly bigger. So if you've got cases that are perfect fit, or you've got the Magic Keyboard that's the 12.9, it'll probably work, but it probably won't fit exactly right, because it is, again, it's like a millimeter thicker, and it's about, I think it's 100 grams heavier. No, not even that. It's slightly heavier, slightly thicker. So do keep that in mind. What else is good about this? Well, the other thing is, and because we're talking about whether you upgrade to things, you know what else is going to be cool when these actually hit the shelves, or the virtual shelves, is that they're going to make the 2020 and 2018 iPads Pros super affordable. And here's the thing. I have not hit a point with my 2020 iPad Pro, and I know people like Jade Star and others who have the 2018 iPad Pro. We're not hitting bottlenecks of performance. Everything we need to do in iPad OS works beautifully. And that's with either 4 gigabytes or 6 gigabytes of RAM and the old A12 processor. So those are still very modern, very capable machines. So what you can do, you can sit back and wait for suckers like me that have a perfect condition iPad Pro 2020 that is only a year old, that are probably going to eventually bite the bullet and buy themselves a new one. And then you can just swoop on in and pick those up for a lot less than you would have before. So there you go. That's another positive. Whenever something new comes out that is a big change, those that are looking to go, a generation or two older, you're going to clean up, because people will get rid of it. So that is it. The 12.9 inch display looks gorgeous. The M1 chip up to 2 terabyte storage, up to 16 gigabytes of RAM is nuts. I think that there's some things coming, and many other people do, not just me. Other more knowledgeable people than me think WWDC is going to announce some really cool stuff from a development and an app point of view. And yeah, they are just going to be good. What is bad though? We've got to talk about the bad, don't we? 5G, I just simply could not care about. I don't know if anyone wants to tell me that it's something different, but I've never bought an iPad with 5G in there. So I've only ever, we'll just come back here. Where's the bit where it talked about it's 5G? There you go, XDR, 5G. So I've never owned an iPad that has its own SIM card, because I've got a phone, and I can just tether to my phone. Why would I pay for another entire separate data plan when I've already got, I pay for like 200 gigabytes of data on my phone. I pay $100 a month. I'm not paying another $30, $40 a month and paying the addition to get the 5G chip in there. So that's, to me, is a bad, but hey, just buy the Wi-Fi model is my view. It doesn't actually matter that much. The other thing is how much attention they've paid on the cameras. Now, I know it's 2021 and people are doing a lot of things. I'll just see if we can find the camera stuff. People are doing a lot of things with their iPads and iPhones in terms of, there's 5G again, in terms of doing Zoom calls. There we go. Here's the cameras. So in terms of doing Zoom calls and creating video and editing and that sort of thing, I still have never. I've owned my iPad 2020 for a year. I've never taken a video with it, and I've maybe snapped 10 photos just randomly, and I can't even remember why I would have done that. Because it sits on its magic keyboard stand here. I'm not really taking it out and about. So I don't really know why there's this big focus on cameras and why they've changed this all around, except for that purpose right there. Because it's 2021, because so many people are doing that, they've updated, especially that front camera. They've got this new center stage thing, which means it will follow you around. So if you're on a call and you're moving about, it'll follow you around. But yeah, I don't know why you'd ever use this. And the old joke is that the only people that use their iPad cameras are people with iPad minis, because they're usually grandmas just wandering around taking snaps like that. And I don't say that to be detrimental. I just say that's kind of what it is. I don't see anyone. If this is a pro device, this is an iPad Pro, I don't see too many pros actually using their iPad Pro camera to do anything. But there you go. It's got amazing cameras on there if you want to use them, and the LiDAR sensor on there as well. So it's got all of the stuff when it comes to that. You can do crazy augmented reality dancing on the floor, which they showed, which is a good thing, I guess. The 11-inch doesn't have the screen, so I mean that's a little bit sad. So the 11-inch iPad Pro is just the exact same screen, but they just couldn't. You couldn't cram all of those mini LEDs into the 11-inch, and it would have just been prohibitively expensive. So I guess I understand that. But we talked about the 12.9-inch being slightly heavier and slightly thicker. It also has a slightly bigger battery, which is a good thing. But apparently it's rated the same. So because it's got the M1 chip in there, they needed a slightly bigger battery. It made it slightly thicker and heavier, but it's still going to last about the same in terms of battery life, which is a good thing. And the other thing to keep in mind, so a lot of folks, I think it might have been you, Mark. There you go. Yeah, and Mark's talking about the 5G. Why wouldn't you just connect to your phone? Exactly. Mark and other people have basically said, the iPad Pro and the iMac, the difference between these has completely blurred over. But here's some things to keep in mind. iPad OS has some limitations. So when you look at this display and you think, oh, great, Thunderbolt, I'll hook it up to my nice display. Keep in mind that it only has mirroring at the moment. iPad OS only supports mirroring. It doesn't support extended display. So that means you can only hook up one monitor, and you can only display on that monitor exactly what you're displaying on your iPad screen. Now, if you've ever done this before with the older adapters or with your iPad Pro, the resolution, because Apple refused to use any 16:9 resolutions on any of their mobile devices, yeah, don't get me started, it will look kind of weird. It'll never fill up the screen, or if it does, it's going to be morphing and skewing your image. So that's something to keep in mind, as opposed to using a Mac. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to replace my entire desktop experience with an iPad Pro, it's close, but it's not quite there, because you can't get a nice 2-monitor display like this. You can hook up a Thunderbolt or a USB-C hub, and I have that on my iPad Pro here, and it works well. You can connect up all your devices. That's cool. But keep in mind that your display is not going to be exactly the same. The ability to use keyboards and mice is not exactly the same in iPad OS. It's getting there. It's similar, but not all of your apps are going to be completely enhanced for keyboard and mouse use. So I'm only saying that to say, keep that in mind. If you are going, hey, why would I ever buy an iMac or a MacBook or a Mac Mini? There are some differences. You're still not getting that desktop experience now. In June of this year at WWDC, will you get that desktop experience? I think we're going to get closer, but that's just me. Let's have a quick beverage. All right, let's talk price, shall we? So we've talked about all the nice stuff, but let's talk turkey. Let's cut to the chase and say, Pete, what am I paying for this? Well, let's jump into the iPad Pro and let's take a look. So I'm here. This is in US dollars, by the way. I know I'm in Australia. If you're in other parts of the world like Australia, you just basically add 30 to 40% on everything. So I know here that the $7.99 there, that's actually $10.99 Australian. So just keep that in mind. And the euro and the UK British pound are about the same as what we're seeing here. So your 11-inch starts from $7.99. But that's a bit deceptive, because unless you're going to go, if you're getting a Pro device, is 128 gigabytes of storage going to be enough for you? I think not. So I would actually say that your starting point is the 256, which is $8.99. I would actually say that given all the stuff we've talked about with audio, with video for creators, It's actually 512. This is what I have on my iPad 2020, and it is plenty. 256 would be fine. 128, I think you're going too thin. So 1099. So you're paying just over $1,000 for that. That's the 11-inch model, of course. If you go to the 12.9, well, things get a little bit hairier pretty quickly. You're up to $13.99. Now, keep in mind that these are the 512 model. They're not going to have they're only going to have the 8 gigabytes of RAM, not the 16 gigabytes. Now, if I'm going to upgrade, for me personally, would I bother doing it if I'm not going to get the full 16 gigabytes? Because I'm not going to buy another, you know what? I said this last year. I said this a year ago. I'm not going to buy another iPad Pro like for a long time. This 2020 is going to last me 3-4 years. Yeah, maybe not now. But I definitely want to make sure that the Mac M1 version would last me longer. So what would I do? Well, if I wanted to replace out my existing 11-inch and I didn't care about the Liquid Retina display, I kind of do. But let's just say I didn't. I would want to go for at least the 1 terabyte version here. So that's going to be $14.99, which I've spec'd out as actually $22.99 Australian. So $2,300 Australian. And this is that price point that I was talking about before of that $1,500. So if you had $1,500 to spend, this is what I would say is the direct comparison when we're talking about what you would buy of this. So there's your $14.99. You've got the same stuff. You've got the 8-core. You're only getting 256 and you're only getting 8 gigabytes of memory in this. So you are paying a significantly more price premium for your iMac as opposed to your iPad. But again, you're getting a 24-inch screen compared to 11-inch screen. If you want to do a bit more of a relevant comparison, you go with the 12.9, well, that's going to be $17.99. And then you're starting to compare to some of these iMacs. Now, the sad thing is we don't have the full pricing. You'll notice here that because you can't pre-order these yet, we know the price of these 3 versions. So $16.99 is the 512 with the 8 gig, but we don't know what it's going to cost to upgrade to the 16 gigs or up to the 1 or 2 terabytes because they're not available for order yet. They will be on the 30th, which is what, a week away. You can order on the 30th and you can get it in May. So that is the sort of pricing there for that one. And again, the iPad Pro. Now, I know what you want me to do. You want me to spec out the absolute best. So we will. 12.9 inch with your 2 terabytes, which is going to give you the 16 gigabytes of RAM. Let's say you just desperately want the 5G, 3G. What decade are we in, Pete? The 5G. Yeah, $23.99, and this is spec'd out at over $3,000 for me here in Australia. So not anything that's ever going to happen, and that's a lot of change, yeah, to spend on an iPad Pro. Considering that you can get a pretty solid, like if you are just using Garage, let's take it back a notch. Let's say you are using GarageBand to create music, or even Cubase's or Audio Pro or something along those lines. You know what's actually really good for that? The iPad. Yeah. So you can actually buy yourself a regular iPad if you don't care about having, the chins and the bezels and all the other things. You can come in here and grab yourself a 128 Wi-Fi iPad for $429. And my daughter has exactly this iPad. She loves it. It works really well. It does everything. She edits in LumaFusion. She uses GarageBand. She uses it for obviously watching YouTube because she's a kid and everything else. And it works perfectly for her. You've also got, don't forget, you got the iPad Air. So you can come in here and spec out yourself an iPad Air. The Air 4th generation, still got the USB-C port there. It is still a very nice machine here. And with this one, you could even spec it out up to 256 and you're only paying $749. So before you take the plunge and you go, I'm buying an iPad Pro because I'm making music, don't forget, until a year ago, until I got this iPad, I was using an iPad Air 2 as my main iPad. And that was like a 64 gigabyte model with very, very old hardware. And it was working fine. I had no problems in GarageBand, no problems in LumaFusion. So keep that in mind that you do not need the latest and the greatest. If you want to go for it, go for it. But the other cool thing is, as we mentioned before, that as soon as these things start coming out, then you're going to see a reduction in price of the second-hand and the refurbished models of your other iPads. So that could be good. Andrew Jackson's saying, I'm on the Air and it's working great. Yeah, exactly right. And also, I'm going to see what happens with the MacBook Pro 14. Yes, so that's the other thing to keep in mind. If you're thinking, I've got to make a decision, I've got to make it now. If you can wait, I would wait until WWDC. I think this is the thing. We've seen, if you're a poker player, you've seen your hole cards and you've seen the flop. But what's going to happen on the turn in the river, I think we'll know more about that. So you may be holding 2 pair, but guess what? You may hit a full house or even 4 of a kind if you wait till June. See? Poker analogies for the win. So that is what we're thinking there. So again, let's just summarize all of this again. We've got a new iMac, we've got a new iPad Pro. you've got all the Apple dust in the air that's making you think that it's good, just stop and go through. Maybe watch this again, check the specs over on the Apple website, look at your budget, look at what you actually need to do. And something that I say whenever we talk about gear, something that I always say is use the gear you have right now to create, because the gear doesn't make the difference. If you're creating music, if you're editing video, if you're doing art, it is not the gear that makes the art. It's the art that you make on the gear. So if you're using an older iPad, if you're using an older Mac, I know people that are using iPhone 6Ss and creating some of the coolest music going around. So you do not need the latest and greatest gear to create good music. The other thing I wanted to mention here is, what do you do if you're looking to upgrade? So this whole video has been about upgrading. What do you do if you want to upgrade? Well, here's what you want to do. You want to think about what you do with your old gear. And can I just recommend that trading in with Apple is not a good deal. It never has been, and it probably never will be. It's convenient as all heck, but you're not going to get a good price. Let's see exactly what that not so good price may actually be. So turn the device you have into the one you want, so you can take your old iPhone and turn it into a new iPhone. You could get credit towards a purchase. Let's look at what those credits are. So there's all your iPhones. Here's your iPad. So your device is an iPad Pro. Estimated trade-in value up to $820. Now, it won't tell you off the bat exactly what you're going to get for your device, but these numbers here are always the absolute latest maximum spec devices. So that iPad Pro would be the 1 terabyte 4G iPad Pro 2020. And they're going to give you $820. I can assure you, if you go onto Craigslist or eBay or Gumtree, you're going to be able to sell your iPad Pro 2020 with 1 terabyte for a heck of a lot more than 820 US Freedom Eagles. You're going to get yourself probably closer to 1,500. So it's a bit like the old, the cash converters, the pawn shop kind of prices. If you want the convenience of not having to think, not having to list it, not having to have strangers come into your house or mail things out, then sure, go ahead and trade it in with Apple. But don't expect to get anything close to a reasonable price for your trade-in. Just wanted to say that because, obviously there'll be people out there that are using older iPads that are thinking, hey, Apple have a trade-in, I wonder what I'll get. You'll get not that much. So that's something to keep in mind if you are looking to trade that in. What else do we have here? Now, why would you go a tablet or a Mac? Again, we had the poll here, and a lot of people were saying, I prefer the portability of having a tablet, or they were saying, I prefer having everything. I'm recording in the home studio anyway. It's actually a completely personal choice. The answer is almost always it depends, and it depends on whether you want portability and the flexibility of mobile, or whether you're literally sitting in your audio cave and doing things 24/7 and you never need to leave. So if you never need to leave, guess what? The best bang for buck right now, in my opinion, is a Mac Mini. Mac Mini, you plug it in, you grab a keyboard and a monitor, and you're away. And for $699, you are getting the best power and performance for your creating. And I'm biased because I have one, but I've found this. I've found this to be true. If you want to have the fancy screen and all the fanciness of the new iMac, get the new iMac. But keep in mind, you're going to be paying twice as much because you get paying for the nice 4.5K 24-inch screen. If you're looking to go mobile, then the iPad Pro is amazing, but it is super expensive. And again, if you don't need that level, think about some of the other things that you can go with. You don't always have to go that. Don't always have to get the latest and greatest. All right, we're at the end here, but we've got about 5 minutes. If you have any questions and answers or any other things, any other comments that you want to throw out there, now is the time to do so. And hello, by the way, I've missed everyone here. SM Borthwick, Christopher Stefani, Metalhead Hippies in the house, Mark Bro, Joe Eager, Duncan Robertson. There you go. Duncan says, monitor won't be nearly as nice as the iMac. Monitors that quality are very expensive. Exactly. So yes, you are paying, the premium you're paying with the iMac is because you're getting a really, really good monitor. Free engraving, Andy Dion's all over the free engraving. Yeah. Little tip, if you ever want resale value on your gear, don't engrave it. Saying happy 30th birthday, Mark, is not going to be something that someone wants on their iPad if and when you sell it. But there you go. And yes, don't forget to put an air tag on all of your gear. What else have we got? Andrew Jackson says, I'm going to wait to see what happens. Yeah, sorry, I've already said that. Pete, why would you need 1 terabyte? Yeah, so I wouldn't. And like I said, I only have 512 gigabytes on my iPad right now. Why you would need 1 terabyte? Well, it's going to be that if you're going to use this with what I think you're going to be able to get, after WWDC. So the next step for Apple, like I said, this is the pre-game. This is the flop. This is your hole cards and the flop. The turn in the river. What's going to happen with that? And what not just me, but other people are predicting is that there's going to be some sort of pro app play. There's going to be something that's going to need you to have those desktop specs on your iPad Pro. And it's going to be something along the lines of having Final Touch and Logic and all of these apps available finally on your iPad Pro. So yeah, right now, do I need it? No. Would I buy the 1 terabyte just to get the 16 gig of RAM to future-proof myself? Probably. I think it's a worthwhile investment. So Christopher Stefani says, very happy with my iPad Air 3rd gen. I bought a year ago. Can't help but have a bit of buyer's remorse given the multiple generations. Yeah, exactly. And you're going to have buyer's remorse. And that's the thing. As soon as you buy something, they're already planning the next one. So again, just make your decision, buy your thing and start using it. Because remember, the longer you wait, like yes, you can wait forever, but then you're not creating that whole time. So make sure you continue creating with what you have now and don't worry too much if you don't get exactly what you want. Hello to Russ, who's here live as well. Hope you're doing well. Rodney Stewart says portability is the only benefit, but I can get that for the MacBook Air. Exactly. So you can as well. Don't forget that the MacBook Airs start at $999, and they've got the same guts as that lower end $1299 iMac. So if you want the portability, but all the guts of the iMac, MacBook Air, still a great buy. Absolutely. Ivan Idea, thank you very much for the super chat. See, it's folks like Ivan Idea that can actually help us keep the lights on, because without Ivan Idea, we're going to look a bit like this, or some might say a little bit like this. So we need people. We need people like Ivan Idea to keep the lights on and keep the green screen functioning. Did you see that? That was a bit nuts. Greg Hernandez says the Air 2 64GB 2014, I might trade in for simplicity and lower monthly payments. Max I could get is maybe $200 on eBay. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you got something that's you're only going to get a couple of $100, so I'm the same. I wouldn't probably bother selling my iPad Air 2 on eBay because of all the inconvenience. I'm probably only going to get 150, $200. So maybe trading it in is a good idea. Or maybe I should probably donate my really old iPads to people, to others, like charities. I'm sure there's kids that need iPads to create stuff. Mark saying sketch on iPad, big work on the mini, best of both worlds. Absolutely. Why not have both? Yeah, if you can, why not have both? Absolutely. How's the song going? It's going well. I'm doing a song at the moment in Cubase, speaking of iPad, on my iPad. It's going quite well, so you can tune into that series. We'll be finishing that up next week. Tom Rochelle says, if you can swing a new iPad and a mini, best of both worlds. Absolutely. Banking on needing the 16. That's exactly right. I'm banking on the fact that if I'm going to spend up to $2,000, I might as well spend the $200 to jump from the 512 to the 2 terabyte and get the 16 gig of RAM to future-proof myself if I want to use things like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro and have all of the additional stuff. Do you think that new apps like Logic will only be compatible with the iPad Pro 2021? It's looking more and more like that, Victor, to be honest. I don't know, and no one does apart from the inside traders at Apple, but I think so, because if they are releasing these Pro apps, basically the next version of these Pro apps will be universal apps that will run on the M1 on any M1 system. But I don't think that they're going to focus on backward compatibility for the Pro level apps. I think there's going to be a very distinct difference between anyone running an A series and the M series. Given that, though, that the A12 is still fairly similar to the M1, but it ain't exactly the same. And Apple will go for convenience and probably getting more of our cash. Alrighty, that is going to do it for today. So thank you for being here. I hope this gave you some information. Remember, knowledge is power, and information is what you need to make your decisions on these things. So don't go out there and just make a snap decision because it looks all shiny and because Tim Buff Cook got up there and showed his guns and told you to buy it. Sorry, Tim. You're doing very well. You're doing very well. I just need to hit the gym. I'm feeling bad. I need to be like Buff Cook. Do go and do your research. Jump over to the Apple website. Everything you need is there. All the specs are there. Now, I also have a guide here, which is about to be updated. If you're watching this on the replay, it may already be updated with the new iPad specs. But if you go to studiolivetoday.com/iPad, I've got all of my iPad recommendations there. Now, they're from September 2020. So guess what? They're about to be updated to April of 2021. And I'll have to change up what I'm recommending there because my recommendations for performance will no longer be the iPad Air 2020, the iPad Pro 2020. It is, of course, going to have to be the iPad Pro 2021. But I will probably wait until someone actually buys one and we start seeing the reviews or gets one from Apple. I've also got my comparison chart there. So this will be updated very soon. This is every single model of iPad ever from the very first one. By the way, did you see that they compared the performance and they said it's 750 times faster than the first iPad? Is anyone worrying about that? Is anyone thinking, I wonder how these 2021 iPads are compared to the ones that you released 11 years ago? Yeah, no, not a thing. Anyway, you can come in here, you can check out what connections they use, Lightning USB, all the processor information, all the RAM information, and the pricing and storage sizes as well. So studiolivetoday.com/iPad will get you over there. And finally, as we mentioned before, the show here today is brought to you by me and by the studiolivetoday.com merch. So if you want to look cool and confuse the heck out of your friends, jump over to the merch store now. Grab yourself a mug. They are epic and they hold your coffee, which is always a good thing, or a t-shirt or a hoodie. And once again, to celebrate Tim Cook looking so buff, use the code BuffCook. You're going to save yourself 13% off any of those. Coming up next, if you're watching here live, I will be chatting with Jade Starr. Yeah, so I'm going to go and fill this with delicious coffee, and then you can come over here to How to App. It's the Rant edition, so How to App on iOS. So we'll be continuing this conversation, speculating, pontificating, doing all those things, and we'll be doing it over on YouTube. And hopefully, whatever that noise is outside goes away between now and then. Thanks everyone for being here. Do join myself and Jade in just 10 minutes over on Jade's channel. Should be a whole lot of fun. And please be kind to yourselves, be kind to your wallets, be kind to other people, and keep creating. See you real soon, folks. Bye.